anti-alcohol. I'm not here to bring big alcohol down. It'll always be there. That's not my fight. What I want to do is create more inclusive spaces for people to have options, because I think, and there's a lot of us that don't drink for multiple reasons. I'm in recovery, but there's health, religion. Maybe you just don't want to because you have to drive. And I think we need more spaces and events like that. So,
Welcome back to Auxano, where we discuss our guests' causes of growth and their causes of change. Today, I am with Christina Kimbrough. She is the owner of Freelife LLC. But enough about me explaining it. I'm going to let her talk about Freelife.
Oh, thank you so much for having me as well. I'm just so grateful to be here. So Freelife was born, February of 2022, and it's an organization that builds community around sobriety or living a substance-free life. So I'm 4 years sober from an addiction to alcohol, and thank you. And I found that it was super isolating. It was really, a lot of my friends were based in alcohol culture, drinking, going out, that kind of thing. And so when I got sober, I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And I just felt like my life was over. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. So I founded Freelife, and it's, we get together, we do all kinds of events just to show people that they're not alone in their journey to not drinking and staying sober.
We love it.
Thank you.
It's so in line with, Auxano and the causes of growth. As per usual, we play a card game right off the bat.
Love it.
It is called Let's Get Deep. They
Okay.
consist of 3 levels: icebreaker, deep, and deeper.
Yeah.
So I recommend choosing one of the cards to answer from, and then tell the audience what the card is, and then give your answer.
Yeah.
But people have been answering both.
Sure.
But dealer's choice.
I love it. I'll go deeper.
Okay.
Let's go.
Actually, we'll go level 1
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm like, I love deep conversation, so I'm good. All right. So just flip it over and read it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What a cool concept. Okay. Ooh, have you ever had a ghost encounter? No. And I think I'm terrified to have one. You know what I mean? Like, to be real, like, I can't even watch anything remotely scary, because the feeling stays with me. So I'm like an empath. So maybe you would think I would, because I'm very in tune to other people, to feelings and places and rooms, things like that. But no, I've never had a ghost encounter, and I'll go on the record. I hope I don't.
Okay. All right. Are you on the boat for here? You said
do
deeper,
it. Let's just do it. Yeah.
You said deeper, so
Yeah,
go
sure.
ahead and give
Okay.
the deep.
Sure. Okay, so deep. Okay, who was your first kiss? Oh, how fun. Okay, how was it, and how old were you? This is fantastic. So my first kiss his name was Chris. Full Deseo. We're friends to this day, and this is a fantastic
Wow.
story. So I was probably 18, late bloomer, and he was my best friend, my best guy friend. And so I was about to go to college, and it was the summer before I went to college, and I was like, you can't go to college and never kiss someone. I feel like most people in high school have at least already experimented sexually, I hadn't even kissed someone. And so I was like, we were hanging out one night, and I was like, let's do this. Now, the reason I have to share it, what's so funny, is he is still to this day my husband's best friend.
Wow.
I know. So it's part of the reason we met. So, like, it's just funny. We're all still friends, but yeah, he was my first kiss.
Wow.
Isn't that funny? I know.
I think that's actually very sweet. It's
Thank
really
you.
cool. And the fact that, I mean, I don't want to, be too intrusive,
No.
but, did you guys ever date, or was it just I'm going to go to college and I'm going to kiss
Yeah,
this
it's a
person?
great question. I think it was one of those things where we were always best friends, and actually we had this pact that by 35, if neither of us was married,
Oh.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like that. Like,
Yeah,
we
that's
liked
cute.
each other. Yeah, very. Like, so our parents were best friends, and so we grew up, from literally the age of 1 year old together. So I don't think we liked each other. It was just kind of like, I would take him to, I took him to prom because I had no other date, like that kind of thing, So we never officially dated. We were just always each other's backup. But luckily, it's ironic, he introduced me to my now husband, and I'm very happily married. But it was so long ago, it's not even a thing. But it's just funny.
Yeah.
So that's a great question.
It's funny because I've actually I just make sure that they're icebreaker, deep, and deeper. But I've actually never, the card game isn't
Yeah.
on. I've never seen the questions.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you really just
Yeah,
put
it's,
them out.
yeah, it's and if they're usually, sexual in nature, where
Sure.
it's I'm like, all right, let's not
Sure,
answer this. Let's
but
cut this
first
out.
kiss is innocent enough.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
and it's my story really is that innocent. We just made out, and it was so so weird. That's how I knew I didn't like it. You know what I mean? It was just
Yeah.
a great guy, but I was just like, there's no chemistry here. But at least now I don't have, because it really was, I was like, I just can't go to college and not have kissed someone. To me, I mean, it's funny, and that's such an arbitrary thing, but I don't
gotcha.
want to be in the door and being like, I don't even know.
It's funny because I feel like there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And actually, I mean, I've actually met people where they've never gone on like a true date, like
yeah.
even in their 20s,
Sure.
and it's like there's nothing wrong with that. So
Not at all.
super cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, deeper?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we're at the deepest level now. Okay. Do you believe in destiny and fate? Why or why not? Okay. I can say I like to think about this stuff. I like to philosophize a lot, and I will say no.
Wow.
Yes, and that opinion for me has changed. I was raised evangelical Christian, and it was just always told to me that God has a plan, right? And that's really hard, right? When you think that everything is planned out for you, and then really you just your job is to pray and find out what God's plan is. And I just, given all the things in the world that are happening and have happened, it's very hard for me to resonate and think that this is God's plan. It's interesting because I'm still on a path with my own spirituality, and I don't know exactly what I believe, but yeah, I mean, to keep it short, I think that life is a lot more random than we think. So, yeah, I do not believe in it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Thank you.
I not to like stoke or add like oil to fire, but in my personal opinion, I think it's almost a pity if we were just a culmination of like random cells and just atoms. But I love it.
I hear that, and to push back, and I love code dialogue. I think that we can make meaning though, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so like this past year was the hardest of my life, and I dealt with chronic pain and surgery and injury, and I kept looking for meaning in it, and I couldn't find any, right? And so I was like, well, maybe things just happen, but then it's up to me and how I respond to them, and I can make meaning out of it.
Yeah.
Like and it also just to me felt a little I can't think of the correct word, but it was just strange to me that every single individual would have like some plan written out by some being in the sky. You know what I mean? That everything had to have a deeper meaning, because sometimes also things just suck, and sometimes they're just hard. And that can be okay too. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to have a purpose. Anyway, but again, I'm open to my mind changing again. This is where I'm at right now.
Yeah, we're so in flux.
Yeah.
And I'm a true believer that like life is constantly in flux, and what you believe today could change in the next 5 years or the 10. But I do know that we're meant to change.
Oh, 100%.
Which I think that's actually a great segue into talking about Freelife and change, because that is essentially what your company is centered on, is the change in community, a change in self, mastery of self. So I wanted to ask if you could tell your story on the origins of Freelife.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I can take you, so I am almost 4 years sober, I think I mentioned, so I can take you back there. I mean, because that's really, I didn't know it at the time, but that's really where it was starting. I'm a military spouse, and my addiction really to alcohol took off being a military spouse, because military, they're gone. My husband's gone a lot. And so it's very isolating. I also had like a great career when I met him, and gave it up, as you do, for love, and married. And so I really lost a big sense of self when I moved, because we had to move around a lot with military, you do as well. So looking back, I was drinking because lots of reasons, but loss of community, loss of identity, loneliness, frustration. And really it continued for about a decade. And I connected to people through alcohol. I mean, I think a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, I mean, not even just that age group, we use alcohol in bars and going out to connect, although how deep are those connections really are, right? And then one night, 4 years ago, I stayed out all night drinking, I know, and it's dangerous looking back on it. And my husband is an incredible person, but he was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, he didn't threaten to divorce, but it was kind of like, if you don't get help, I don't know what to do. Because I was doing this a lot. It was getting worse. And so in January of 2020, this is crazy because we didn't know the pandemic was coming, but I got sober right at the height of the pandemic. I was like, okay, what do I need to do? So I quit my job, moved home to Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm originally from, moved in with my grandma, and went into intensive outpatient, which is group therapy, and I got sober. did the hard work of getting sober.
Where do you think you'd be if you didn't? Because, like, during the height of the pandemic, the fact that you got sober during the height of the pandemic,
Yeah.
all that alone time, all that, what do you think would have happened to you if you were just drowning the time in the bottle?
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of things. I mean, my health, my mental health. So that was a big part of it too. Is like my mental health was just severely impacted by drinking. I mean, I think most people are, but you know, it was crazy. So I mean, it's scary to think of where I would be. You know, I unfortunately addiction a lot of times progresses, and mine was just steadily getting worse.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I would not be in a great place. Probably divorced. You know, like you know, it's hard to tell, but yeah, it would not be good.
Yeah, that. I mean, definitely glad that you're out of that rut.
Yeah, thank you.
When it comes to coming into a 757 startup, was that the catalyst for you to start Freelife, or like you were looking for a catalyst because your cause of growth was already there?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, we started a couple months before we applied. So I think the catalyst was again just not having any sober friends, you know, just not having anyone that didn't drink. And I'm not anti-drinking, but when you are the sober person, it's really hard to go out. You know, I don't want to be the DD all the time. Right? I mean, here and there, it's fine, you know, but like I felt very lonely in my recovery, and I was far enough in, you know, 3 years at that time, last year at this time, where I felt solid, you know, because the first 2 years for me were really just getting the ground underneath my feet, right? Like, just stay sober, get your mental health right, like kind of get your life back together. And then I started to look up and I was like, oh, I don't have any community that doesn't drink, and we live in a culture, pick any city, it's not just Norfolk, like that's inundated with it. You can't go anywhere. It's at every event, it's just everything you do. And so I was just frustrated, and I didn't see anything really like that where I could meet people that didn't drink. And so Freelife was born. Yeah.
It's usually the first question I ask all the guests, but when you were a child, what did you want to do?
That's a great question. I think I wanted to be an actor or an actress. I remember saying that. I've always loved to talk and be on stage and perform. So I think that would have been a dream job when I was little, and then I probably realized, it's a little harder than it looks. You know, it sounds fun, but like it takes a little more than just getting, you know, going and acting. So
I
yeah.
gotcha. Now that your mission is Freelife,
Yeah.
what life advice would you give that young woman?
It's gonna be okay, because like especially for anyone in active addiction, because sometimes so the name was born because it came to me like in a subconscious state. Really, I was like asleep but not, you know. And addiction really feels like a prison, because for me, I would wake up and then you'd have the compulsion to drink. Like you really had no time to live your life, because you're either figuring out how to get your drug of choice, then you're high or drunk on your drug, then you're coming down, then you're figuring out, you know, so like there's no time to build relationships, get help, you know, so it really felt like a prison. And so but I remember in that time thinking like, this is never going to end. Like, how do I get out of this? You know, and what are we even going to do once we're sober? You know, that kind of thing. So I think it would be just like, hang in there. Like, hang in there. Yeah. It gets better. People tell you it gets better, but it really does.
So there was back when I was in the military as well, I definitely had a bit of a drinking problem for a little bit. I was at a party that I probably shouldn't have been at with a bunch of people that I didn't really trust, but I wanted to fit in.
Yep.
You know, I wanted to find that community that, long story short, I got like super blacked out drunk. I like remember texting everybody on my phone, like saying I love them, which is I think is good.
Fun.
You know,
I've done that. I usually called people, which is humiliating. So I totally understand.
Yeah. And so I really resonate with the loss of community, especially if you were part of like that group of addiction, where like you associate. Many people might even associate Christina Kimbrough with like, oh, she's the fun girl who drinks a lot. And so I totally resonate with that.
Thank you. Yeah, and it really was like that. It's funny you said that, because I got that comment a lot. A lot of people would be like, oh, you had a problem? You're just fun. Like, maybe you took it too far a couple times. Like, you didn't look like you had a problem. And I think that's such a big misconception as well. I think people think, like, oh, problem maybe means you're homeless or you have multiple DUIs or you've lost a job or a home. And on the outside, nobody knew I was struggling with an addiction. In fact, I've had mental health diagnoses, and I've talked about those very openly. What's interesting is I had a harder time talking about my addiction to alcohol. I felt more embarrassed around it, I guess, because it was like, mental health. I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I have diagnosable anxiety and depression. Like, I felt like it was not easier, but it was easier to talk about. Whereas when I moved home to get sober, I lied to people for the first 6 months. I moved in with my grandma, who's, on a side note, one of those amazing, crazy people who's had like one drink and had a bad hangover and never had a drink again in 60 years. You know what I mean? So that was a great place to get sober. But, yeah, I lied, and I would just, when you run into people, and I just like, oh, I'm living with my grandma. She needed some help during the pandemic, like being alone, whatever. And then I think after, 6 months of me, almost a year of being sober, I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is ridiculous. I can't lie about what I've been going through. So, yeah, that's very real.
Like, why am I lying about my recovery?
Yeah.
Why am I lying?
Yeah. And I always tell people that. I'm like, now, again, for almost 4 years, February 3rd, I'll be 4 years sober. But now I'm very proud of it because it's like one of the biggest things I've ever accomplished. And I was like, why was I embarrassed of that? Like, it was incredibly hard to get sober. I'm not going to be ashamed of that. It's like that thing to be excited about. But it took a while to get there. Yeah.
Did you struggle with like that imposter syndrome of like, I will never be sober?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I don't know the statistics on it, but it takes people a long time. Like, I did not get sober on my first try. I think it took 2 years of relapse. Like I'd have maybe 3 months of sobriety and then I'd drink again. So prolonged sobriety, where it was a couple years in, which I think 3 years is considered, I think, long-term sobriety, that took me 2 years to get to that point, and tons of, therapy and deep self-work and all the things. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Well, definitely educate me, because I was drinking like bourbon every night when I was in the barracks. I mean, there's nothing to do. Right. I was just working out. But like I still drink on occasion. Like a week ago, my older brother flew in to do a podcast here, and we had a stout at Tribal X. When you say like relapsing, was it like daily, like you're like drinking again, or was it like a drink here or there?
For me, it was always off to the races. Like, I would never, just have one. I mean, sometimes, very rarely, yes. So I'd go like maybe a month or even a couple of weeks without drinking, and then I would pick up and start drinking daily again. Yeah, it was hard. But everyone, it's so different for everybody. And I always tell people, like, you don't have to identify. I don't use the word alcoholic. Freelife is very intentional about that. I don't use that word. I don't like it. To me, I don't resonate with it. But I always tell people, like, you don't have to have, reach a rock bottom or any of those things, or ask yourself, am I an alcoholic? I used to Google that all the time, to quit drinking. It's really just more of like, are my drinking habits, how are they impacting my life, my relationships, my goals? Alcohol was getting in the way of who I wanted to be, and I always tell people to look at it that way. Like, we don't have to have, it doesn't have to be that deep. It can be like, is alcohol serving me? Right? And if it's not, then okay, maybe do we moderate? Do we look at what that, that kind of thing.
So I personally think that kombucha is like better tasting than beer.
Yeah,
I
love
think it is.
Kombucha.
Is that like your specific drink of choice as an alternate?
Yeah, so I do love kombucha, but I will say there are so many good non-alcoholic drinks now that I drink beer, wine, all kind, again, non-alcoholic. So, Athletics, a big brand I love. They have so many good beers. But I always like to put a disclaimer out there, too. I didn't start drinking non-alcoholic stuff until I was 3 years sober. Again, everyone's journey is different. I was just really afraid to try it because, you just have to be aware and know yourself, because if you try something that you used to like, it could be triggering and then it could cause, so I just always tell people, like, be aware, Yeah. But, I tried it. And I love them. I have them all the time. So it's great.
Yeah. I love how on LinkedIn, I'm sorry I couldn't go, but your mocktails at sunset.
Thank you.
Was successful.
Yeah, it was so great.
Yeah. Please, like, run us through like your emotions on on the success of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mocktails at Sunset was a business networking event hosted with a local group called Hampton Roads Networking Group. And, you know, for me, I used to network all the time professionally, and I loved it, but I used to drink.
Right.
Because that's, I mean, it's prevalent everywhere.
That's what everybody does.
Right. And I used to get very, very drunk. And here's the thing. I was
At the networking events?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
After a couple hours. But I was not alone. There's no way. I mean, I'm the only one talking about it openly, but like a lot of us were drinking and driving, and it was just, but this was like, 3 hours into the event type thing. And so, I've been to events, networking events, that have alcohol as a sober person, and that's fine. But I was like, what does it look like to create a whole new space for people where we can just show that we can connect without alcohol? Yeah. And so I met Markella. She's fantastic. She runs Hampton Roads Networking Group, and she was like, oh, I love this. Her 3-year anniversary for her organization was coming up, and she's like, we'll do it. Let's just bring non-alcoholic drinks, and we'll connect. Yeah, we had like over 75 people there, and I mean, Thank you. Yeah. And, it's a little nerve-wracking because I'm like, oh, is this going to be awkward? How are people going to feel? And, I mean, I didn't miss it. I don't think I heard, honestly, it was so refreshing. I heard more people say to me personally, like, this is so nice. It's really nice to be here, like, without alcohol. Or I came just because there's no alcohol. And I was like, oh, that's so exciting. I always say, like, I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm not here to bring big alcohol down. It'll always be there. That's not my fight. What I want to do is create more inclusive spaces for people to have options, because I think, and there's a lot of us that don't drink for multiple reasons. I'm in recovery, but there's health, religion. Maybe you just don't want to because you have to drive. And I think we need more spaces and events like that. So.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I'm on the weird medium myself to where it's like, if I'm going to a party and there's alcohol over, like if there's alcohol and food, I'll flock to the food. Mm-hmm. But like if it's many times where it's like it's the only option, you kind of feel like you have to.
Right.
If it's in the crowd. But now at this point, I usually just get water.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a great point. And people said that at this event. They're like, yeah, I wouldn't drink, but there's often no other options, right? Like it's kind of just there and everyone's doing it, so I do it. So absolutely. And that's why I'm like, the more we can create spaces that include non-alcoholic options, the better.
Yeah. How was organizing the event? How was your mental organizing the actual event? I think we all look at the success of the event, and people would see that, especially on LinkedIn, Instagram. But how was your mental planning it?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. I think anyone in the marketing or events industry understands it's crazy. It's a good kind of crazy. I like it. I do love what Freelife does. I feel like you have to like this kind of thing because events are hard and there's a lot of moving pieces. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you asked that because I often think people, right, they see, oh, you just host parties for a living. And I'm like, well, it's a little more than that, like it's, I'm not complaining by any means, but it's a lot of pieces. So, I mean, it was just a balance. I think there's days where I was like, oh my God, this is so hard. And then there's days where it's just that afterwards you'll look at the pictures or you're connecting with people and you're like, this is so worth it. You know what I mean? So I would say as I go, I'm learning when to take a step back and when to, and also realizing the big thing I tell myself in events is like, I'm not a surgeon. I'm not an EMT. Like, if something goes wrong, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's not an emergency. It's not. I run events. Like, if the food doesn't show up on time or whatever it is, social media, like, it's fine. We're going to live, and so adopting that, like, way of looking at things has taken my stress way low. Way lower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the non-glamorous sides of hosting actually not even hosting like sobriety events, but like the company itself? Like, have you ever had like hawkers like attack you, be like, what you're doing isn't like really helping, or like, have you ever encountered that negative side?
Oh my gosh, 100%.
Wow.
So yes, there's many non-glamorous sides. I don't have to get into it. It's just a lot of sweat and carrying boxes for events. But yeah, actually, on social media in particular, never in person. I think people get really brave behind a keyboard.
A keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Keyboard warriors.
I mean, yeah, I've been called a monster, that I'm killing people, that I don't even know, all kinds of, it's usually on X or Twitter or whatever. Yeah. Because I'm introducing a new way of doing things, So Freelife is a business. It's not a nonprofit. And I get it. A lot of people often think like, oh, you're a nonprofit. And I said, no, like when I was founding, it was a choice, an intentional choice to become a business. And, I think a lot of people like to think like, oh, you're profiting off of people in addiction. And I'm like, I'd be a really dumb business owner or trying to make money off of, you know what I mean? Like going into the business of recovery. Like I'm not getting rich fast. And that's not the goal, anyway. But so yeah, absolutely. I've been told like, because we don't use the word alcoholic, we do have non-alcoholic drinks. A lot of people that are in recovery long-term or not disagree with the model or don't like what we do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gary Vaynerchuk actually coins the
Gary V, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
Go.
I saw the
Yeah.
head nod about just sticking with, which I guess is kind of funny since he's like a champion of wine.
Yeah.
But point aside, he talks about like whatever your brand is, that if you just stick with it long enough, 6, 7, 8, 9, how umpteen years,
Sure.
You'd find your voice. It sounds like that's what you're cultivating. Is you're not cultivating a business. I mean, yes, but what's most important to you is the brand of what Freelife stands for, what it is. And so what do you feel like your purpose is?
Yes, and that makes, I haven't heard him say I love Gary Vee. That is so correct. And right, so like it's funny because a lot of times in the business world, a lot of people are like, how are you making money? How are you scaling? How did it, right? And those are all important. I get that, but I always say Freelife is more than just a business. It's maybe it sounds cheesy, but like a movement or a culture shift. Yeah, we're trying to shift culture in the way we think about things in a couple different ways. One is that like we don't need alcohol at everything. The people that, again, I've said this earlier, the people that have alcohol, that's fine. Like, they can do them. But, like, what does it look like to show people that you can live a full life without it and you can connect to others without it? And then also in the name, it's like when I was getting sober, I was told, okay, there's one way to do it. And if you don't do it this way, you will relapse. And I was like, okay, well, one, I'm going to prove you wrong. Because anyone that tells me, you know what I mean, like, you have to do it this way, I'm like, I don't think so. So Freelife is really about people being able to choose their own path to living a substance-free life, whatever that looks like. So yeah, absolutely. It's a movement. It's shifting culture. So yeah, we're around for the long haul. I love that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was looking at the middle class and what they usually spend, and I was surprised at like I think 15 to 20% like had a alcohol budget.
Wow.
Yeah, like they had rent, food, clothes, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But they actually allocated money for alcohol. And like let's say let's say we both make 40K. 20% of 40K is pretty substantial.
That's a lot.
That's like you save that a year, you could go to the Maldives or
Yes.
Tokyo or like Denmark or something.
Yes.
Maybe like once every 2 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, like
Yeah, that's I'm glad you shared that because it's so true. I mean, yeah, I'm never not amazed at like when I go out to dinner how much cheaper my bills are. You know what I mean? Without a bottle of wine or 5 drinks, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of part of it too is like what does your life look like without a substance, and then how do you build a meaningful life without it? Because it's possible. And I remember in early recovery, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And it's funny looking back, I'm like so busy and it's great. Like recovery is given me everything. But a lot of Freelife's messaging is showing people like, there's life outside of alcohol. There's life outside of the partying. If you want it, right? I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. It's just more of like, if you know and you're questioning your own relationship with alcohol or that life doesn't fit for you anymore, like your life just opens up.
Yeah. I remember actually going like on a date and I was like, wow. I was like, oh, the bill is like the brunt of it was like I ordered a drink, but like the other party actually had like a bottle of champagne and then like a bottle of wine. And I was like, you go.
Yeah.
But like I do imagine how it's like, not that I'm complaining that I paid for it, the date, but like how much more food could we have gotten? Or like,
for sure.
Could we have gone to an escape room after if like we weren't like a little buzzed or if she wasn't drunk at all?
Yeah.
And so I always look at it as a point of preference, yes, but when you talk about like movement, it really rallies and inspires a different type of culture. Do you see yourself moving past just events?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's the goal now is like events locally in Norfolk and, learning how to do them well. And the events are just the way to build community, right?
Yeah.
I know it's a buzzword now, but it's so.
I disagree.
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
going to interject.
Okay,
Yeah.
I appreciate it, but like it's so needed, and I think we were talking about it before we started recording, but like, what does community look like?
Yeah.
You know, in the 21st century, like, what does it look like when we're, you know, in a world dominated by, you know, technology, which I love. I'm here for all of it, but how do we create? Because we have to try something different or new. Loneliness is an epidemic and it's on the rise. And I just did a post about this. So there's like, if you're lonely, you're more at risk for substance use disorder. You know, so yes is the short answer. But yeah, it's learning how to take a model, do it well here, and then like take notes, record it right, and then teach other communities how to do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about moving from Virginia completely to it? Because I know that you say like do it locally, but is the mission global? Is it worldwide?
I would think so. I mean, absolutely. I can't think of a better word, but like franchise is, you know, it sounds like McDonald's, but like, you know, it would be, or maybe chapters, right? Where under the Freelife name, where we start meeting people and have ambassadors that get the mission and the vision, and then start training them, you know, on how to open chapters across the world. Because exactly like people across the world, sobriety, I don't know if it's trending, but it's definitely, people are getting sick of being drunk. You know, like it's popping off, which is exciting.
I feel like they're getting sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah. I hear it all the time. I mean, people are like, oh my God, I feel so great when I wake up. It's so nice to wake up without a hangover. I'm like, to me, 4 years later, that doesn't get old. It really, I mean, it doesn't. I've heard people 18 years in recovery who are like, I remember my hangovers, you know? And like, it's just so nice. Or I didn't do anything dumb. I don't have to worry about what I said at the event or texting a million people. Or, you know what I mean? Or like, oh, those were the worst feelings of waking up and being like, I remember the worst one I ever did. I called my ex-boyfriend's parents. That was a fun one. Yeah, love that for me. Like, that was like 5 or 6 years ago. I didn't even know I had their numbers. But I did it in a blackout. It was like, you know, that's just one of many. And I know I'm not alone. We all do. You don't even, and that's what I always say, like, we don't have to have a problem to just make those mistakes. Like, alcohol's addictive. It changes things. You know what I mean? Like, it changes our brain chemistry while we're drinking. So, like, you're quite literally kind of not in control of your body.
Yeah, I think to even circle back to the point to where your husband was in the military, or is.
Yeah.
I feel like I was always the sore thumb because there came a point where I was like, what is the point of all this drinking? Like, everybody's just getting drunk to get drunk. And in military culture, unfortunately, it's where are we going? Or where are we meeting? And my initial thought is it would be a restaurant. No, they're talking about bars. They're talking about like slamming it back. Yeah. How many they could slam back in a contest. And so I love how your husband also was the one saying, I can't do this anymore. Because alcohol is so prevalent in military culture. Yep. What were like the changes in your guys' relationship? If I'm allowed to ask that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. We're both open. So it's interesting. I had to move because he was drinking as well. Like, we separated, not legally, just we had to separate physically because his drinking wasn't off the rails as mine, but we would play off of each other, right? So, like, I'd be like, I'm going to get sober, I'm getting sober, you know. And then I'd come home and he was already drinking, and I was like, well, screw it, I'm going to join you. You know what I mean? Right? Yeah. So we'd play off each other. And so, yeah, I mean, we had to separate. We knew we wanted to stay married. It was just like, we need to be apart to work on ourselves. And so I took like 9 months we saw each other, you know, visited all that. But like, 9 months of just like, therapy.
Stop drinking.
Yes. And he kept drinking while I was getting sober. I mean, is a continuing journey. And he still drank a few times in the last few years that I've been sober. And even my relationship to that has changed. Because in early sobriety, it was very like, you have to do this with me. I can't have any alcohol around. Now, being almost 4 years sober, I've told him, I'm like, it's your own journey. I can't tell you what to do. It's like that for everybody. Right. And so I'm like, if you want to drink, that's fine. You know, I have my boundaries around it. Like, I think it goes without saying, like, you know, like, can't have it in the house. Don't want it in the house. Yeah. Don't come home drunk. Like, those are our boundaries. But he's sober. He's chosen to be 100% sober with me. and I mean for himself. Thank you. Yeah, it's cool. And for himself and for us. And oh my God, I mean for us personally, our marriage is night and day. I mean, we get along great, and our biggest fights were when we were drunk. I mean, how could they? That's so common. It is. Screaming at each other. Who knows what we were? And then I'd wake up and I'd be like, what did we even argue about?
Why were we fighting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we cut out alcohol, and we were like, oh, we like each other.
I love that. Does he drink? Is he a champion of kombucha as well?
He loves kombucha.
Okay.
He does. Yeah,
okay.
he loves. Oh yeah, we love, and he loves to taste test things. So it's so fun for us to get mocktails and NA beers, and it's just been a fun process together. And we both delved into it and love. Oh yeah, we both love NA. We both used to love beer and still love non-alcoholic beers, and so that's why I love the non-alcoholic industry, because it's nice to have options.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong, right now Freelife does event and planning.
Yep.
Are you guys ever going to move into the beverage or food industry?
That's a great question. I don't think so. I really want to be niche with really focused on what we do. That said, I partner with an incredible person locally who distributes, and so then we do get a percentage of the sales on that.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's actually, Mocktail Club is out of Assembly. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're
cool. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, so Mocktail Club is a canned mocktail, and the owner, Pauline, is from DC, but she's in 757 Collab in the Accelerator program. And so I have someone that sells her product, and then I get a cut of that. Because when you're trying to run events, man, it's hard. Being the host, taking the pictures, I really want my focus to be on. So when people are coming to an alcohol-free event, especially for the first time, sometimes they're nervous. You haven't socialized without alcohol often. So you're it's your first time. Anyway, so what I really see my goal as the founder and host of that is to make everyone feel very comfortable,
inclusive.
Exactly. So I really want to be focused on doing that, and then bringing in someone to help, offset that. So that's a great question, though.
Yeah.
It's just about strategic partnerships, I think, at this point. So if anyone wants to partner, any drink brands,
seriously,
send me a DM.
Yeah, please.
DMs are always open.
Yeah, and that's definitely one thing that I've been trying to work on too. The show's still really new, but plugging in everybody's socials and
100%.
If what's your partner's name?
Yeah, RJ Zimmerman, and actually he's incredible. He has a podcast called Untapped Keg.
Untapped Keg.
I know, it's a great name. And he will be 10 years sober in December, and we're actually doing called Merry Mocktails, a Christmas party for his 10-year anniversary, and then just a sober Christmas party. So he's incredible. He has a podcast, and then actually something that I really love that he does is he has a men's mental health Zoom support meeting.
Wow.
I know we could go off to an offshoot completely on men's mental health, and I can't speak to that obviously, but I have seen it, and then substance abuse and lack of support in that community can be really challenging, and it's incredible what he does. So he does that monthly. I'll give you all his information if you want to tag him, because he's great.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I kind of want to challenge you on it. Why can't you talk about it?
Thanks. Well, I guess just in the sense of, because I didn't want to, I don't like it when people speak for me as a woman. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I mean is that I'm a female and I don't want to speak for the male population. That's all I mean. I can definitely talk. I'm very experienced in the sense of my husband, I've seen all these challenges. My male friends, I see these challenges. That's the only thing I meant is I just didn't want to be
okay, gotcha.
the voice for men, or speaking to their experience.
Well, I think that you should give some observations, because if as we both noticed, most men don't really talk about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your observations that you've seen, especially with men in recovery?
Yeah. Yeah, so I can give a story from my husband. It's not completely sobriety related, but it all ties in. So I remember, we've been together 10 years, but I remember he told me he came to me after a hard day and was opening up. And I was very, kind, right? Condoling, talking, there for him, supportive. And he started to tear up, and he was like, I don't have this with my male friends. I don't feel like I can, you're just he said, he's you're safe. And I was like, why wouldn't I be safe? And, thinking to myself.
Your wife.
Yeah. And he's like, well, if you open up to men, a lot of times, not all, but he's like, there's a couple of responses. They either are oh, that sucks, man. Or there's jokes.
Right.
Right?
The roast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so he was like, it's challenging to feel like you can open up or talk and be vulnerable. And, you know, I've been listening to, actually I'm listening to, it's a great book called Together by Vivek Murthy. He's the, I think, former Surgeon General, about this. The chapter I'm using Audible, and the chapter that I'm in is all on men's loneliness, right? And like the lack of community. And I mean, it dives deep. How many hours do you have? But like a lot of it stems from just the way, even from 1, 4, and 5, the messages that we're teaching little boys versus girls. Girls, it's collaborative, share your emotions, open up. And then little boys, it's be tough, right? Like,
go it alone.
Yes. You're the provider, right? So we're like normalizing from a young age. And what's crazy about it is like when we do these things, like we hurt everybody, because men that aren't developed and aren't given the space to do that then turn into husbands that, you know, like we can't have, like don't have fulfilling marriages, right? So it's like this messaging and doing all this stuff is just hurting all of us.
Yeah. I definitely, I think it's interesting how, especially like in like Asian culture, Mexican culture, like the machismo, where it's like, I'm not going to talk about my feelings because I have to be the sole provider. Whereas I think a lot of family situations might have actually turned out better if they were able to have an open ear, or a community, say like Freelife, where like I know like my grandfather was like, I think every day was smoking and drinking, like we're not even talking about like beers. He was clearing probably 2 bottles of like rum or like I don't know, Don Julio or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And you know, I always say like you, your grandpa, me, anyone that uses any kind of substance, we're doing 2 things. We're meeting a need, right? So we can be kind and compassionate to ourselves, that like we're doing it for a reason. We may not know the reason, like unless we're gonna do the work, but if we can't even talk about it, you know, and I feel like in male culture, you can't as well, right? Like it's just wild to see. And my husband's a very kind, like empathetic human. I'm like, so I chose him, you know, like, but it's wild to see like my friendships versus some of his, where the conversations are so different, you know, whereas like I can spend 3 hours on the phone being affirmed by my girlfriend, and girl culture is for the most part, you know, affirming, or you can open up and share. And you know, it's not for men. It's like, well, we just know it's not healthy for humans. Just take out the gender. Like, we need spaces where we can be vulnerable and share that we're struggling.
Yeah, it takes a village.
It does.
It takes a village.
It does.
And it sounds like Christina is making a Freelife village.
I'm trying. Thank you. But it takes a village to create the village. That sounds really cheesy, but it does. Like, it's not me. It's people like you. It's one step at a time, like you letting me be on your podcast and then projecting that message out to a wider audience that I could never reach. You know what I mean? It's the strategic partnerships. You know, it takes all of us to do it. And that's at the heart of it is definitely sobriety and, you know, creating substance-free spaces for people to connect. But at the heart of it is like, community, right? And what does that look like? What is new community? What does healthy community look like?
Yeah.
You know,
what is healthy
intentional community? Like,
wow.
these are all things.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is much smarter than me. But I mean, like saying these things, and they're just things that I'm taking and piecing together and figuring out.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm in full agreement that when we lead with intention, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
But when we lead with compassion, everybody kind of wins in some way. Whether it's you being you, me being me, and coming together, and then trying to create something that's more deeper than at the surface level of what we know.
Exactly.
And yeah, like I'd like to believe too that, I know that you're not like a fan of like the fate, but I believe in like meeting people isn't really a coincidence. Or in this case, like if we're using logical terms, because I was at the MapQuest workshop, I gained access to like everybody there, and you happen to be there, and so on it goes.
Right, it's so cool. No, and I also love what we're doing here. I like free is a big part of my life. I say that word a lot.
Free!
I didn't mean to do that intentionally, but I like the freedom to exchange ideas. So it's cool. You can believe what you believe about faith, and me too, and I can very openly hear it. You know what I mean? Like, I just think we're unfortunately losing that in culture, and I love to showcase that two people with very different views on any topic can absolutely converse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And honestly, what's crazy about it is it doesn't make you wrong or me wrong. I mean, maybe I sound too fluid, but it's like, who knows?
Yeah.
Who can prove what fate or destiny is? We can't.
Yeah.
Right? It's the ultimate question of, is there a God? Okay, well, like, you know, like, we're going really deep, but it's like, you're right and I'm right, because there's no way to prove it. So I can respect, I love challenging myself and hearing all kinds of views.
I always say, too, that the challenge is important because, like, let's say, like, let me play the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I like alcohol, and you're wrong. You'd then provide your basis on how being sober and how sobriety has changed your life.
Yep.
And I think thus it affirms and gives self-affirmation to your point on why you should continue. So, yeah, I agree.
And, you know, something that I realized, too, is, like, we're all coming from our own perspective and lived experience.
Yeah.
So there could be reasons that you believe in fate and destiny that I will never understand because your life has taken you and, you know what I mean? And then there's reasons that I don't. And I shared some of them with the evangelical Christianity, you know, and everything's planned. So it's, I think if we can look at it that way and try to see people's views and say, like, well, they're a whole person and their opinions are shaped by their experiences.
By
you
their
know,
culture.
I think, right. And we can try and look at the person as a whole and as a human.
And that's generally how I live life. It's like, all right. Well, and I use it a lot, but have you ever heard of the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows by John Connick?
That sounds great, though.
It is. So there are certain feelings that you might feel, certain moods you might feel, but there are no words to describe it. And John Connick has a whole entire book on, like, words that you've probably felt at least once or twice, maybe multiple of them, and he's categorized them. And so it's one that I constantly use a lot, and I think the imaginary word, sonder, by John Connick, is extremely pivotal, because sonder is essentially, his definition, quote unquote, is everyone you see is living an extremely visceral experience as you are. So Christina is in front of me, Beau is in front of you. What life experiences have you lived that I have yet to scratch the surface of? And it's the reciprocity of, like, because you've lived a life, who knows what this person in front of me who knows what type of life this person in front of me had lived. And the word sonder just solidifies this point that everybody lives such a grueling experience. And so I think when we talk about free life and how you cultivate community, it's actually kind of funny because my company tagline is where authenticity inspires hope and cultivates community. And if that's just, like, for, like, the podcasting side, not even on the video, what would your, like, company tagline be? Because it sounds so in line with...
To be honest, I don't know. And and
No
I'm
way.
okay. I know. And two things. One, I'm just being okay with saying I don't know a lot, you know, because the entrepreneurial journey is a lot of I don't knows. That said, it's interesting because I've thought about this a lot because I love branding. I love marketing. What's important, you know. Yeah. And I don't know. So if anyone watching this wants to, like, put it in the comments. But I love yours for 100%. But it would be something similar, to be honest, right? Where it is about community or, the need to feel seen and heard in a community. And what does that look like, you know? Or being present. Because that's a big part of it, too, is, like, when we use substances, we're not present.
Yeah. We should ask Dom Toretto.
Who's that?
Oh, you don't know who he is?
No, but I love being exposed to new people.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, it would have been so perfect. He's literally one of the characters from Fast and Furious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen Fast and Furious.
Okay. Oh, okay. That was such a failed punchline. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I couldn't, like, bring it home for you.
No, it's okay. But, yeah, like... So basic rundown of his character.
Yeah.
He's a meme now where he says family. Yeah. Like, just like, family. Family.
Yeah.
And so he's just become this meme to where, like, if you're ever in trouble, he'll come out of nowhere and be like,
Yeah,
"Family's
yeah.
forever."
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I can picture
So-
that. I love that. Yeah, and that is very similar to what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Because there's not only just the loneliness side, but like how do you build relationships where people can be there for you beyond just like the coffee date or the dinner,
Right.
or whatever it is. Because life is just so hard. It
Yeah.
can be.
It's also short.
Yeah.
It's also very short.
Yeah. And I have found, I don't know, my most meaningful things are just when I'm in relationship with people, right? And when I'm having this is so meaningful to me. And I feel like I hear it all the time when I do events. People, they leave and they're like, that was so fun. That felt so good. And it's like, well, we know the science of like when you're in safe community with people that you like and you feel comfortable with, your body's in rest and digest, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're calm. Obviously, for the most part, I'm speaking generally, but like we know we feel better.
Yeah.
We know oxytocin is like being produced. We know that we are feeling joy, and when we're sharing a story, and then you're nodding and you're really hearing what I'm saying. You're just the core needs that we have are being met, right? Like you're being seen, you're being heard, you're being validated. Those are the basics, and we're not getting them a lot of the time. So that's a lot of the work of Free Life too. Is like, what do conversations look like? How do we have them more intentionally, right? Because a lot of times, even you can leave a coffee date, a new friend, dating, whatever, and be like, ugh, that didn't feel great. We've all had them. We've all had friendship dates, or like dates where you're like, what was that? That was like, oh, And so, how do we connect better?
This is a bit. No, I think it's in line. But I wanted to ask what your love language is, because you've been talking about family, and you've been talking about dates, and you've been talking about relationship. Mm-hmm. What is your love language?
Yeah, I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anybody. I'm a talker, so words of affirmation, I love them. I'm like one of those people that needs reassured a lot. I'm working on it. I'm not getting my sense of self-worth from other people, or like them complimenting me. That's a forever push and pull, but yeah, words of affirmation.
Wow.
Yeah. How about you? I love this conversation.
So kind of funny on a left field, because I'm a first generation Asian son. I think I've been conditioned to where like it's acts of service, but I think if I were to really name like my true love language, it would probably be quality time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is interesting because I feel like the reason why I have the podcast is to have somebody pick my brain. I'm able to pick their brain and be like, this was fulfilling. Yeah. So yeah, I think mine is acts of service. Like, you could quite literally be sitting like on a stool while I clean a garage or something, and I'd be like, quality time. Yeah. Like, no words have to be exchanged. Right. Just that.
No, I love that. My husband's very similar. His is quality time and acts of service. Nice. But when an acts of service and a words of affirmation person marry each other, it can be hard because your receiving type is different as well. Like you're giving and you're receiving.
Right.
Does that make sense?
What is your receiving?
Words of affirmation.
Okay,
Like it goes both ways. Like I'm very affirmative. I'm gonna send that text that you're doing amazing. Like it's gonna. That's just who I am. But then I also like to receive that, and so it's been a forever. My husband and I have had this conversation for years. He knows. Like I'm always like, babe, you didn't tell me how great I did. Like it's a joke at this point. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's just learning. It's very interesting. It's learning what yours are, but it's also learning how your partner or friends, like or whoever's in your life, receives it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I remember one conversation. I was hyping my husband up so much. He was like, "Would you stop? You're constantly telling," and I'm like, he's like, it's, and I can see his perspective. He's like, you're kind of watering down the compliments, like, because you give me so many, or you're saying so much that, like, I don't know how much it means. I was like, that's fair. That's an interesting perspective. You know what I mean? So it's important to learn the other person how they want to receive the love as well.
Yeah. Some food for thought for me.
I know,
yeah,
right?
I don't actually. I think my receiving is. It might actually be words of affirmation. It might be.
Yeah,
but I don't know
yet.
It.
Isn't it interesting, right?
Yeah.
We my husband does acts of service, and I love it. I'm very grateful for it. But on a given average day, I'm gonna prefer the good morning text that you're doing great. I love you so much, babe. Like whatever the long sappy text versus getting my oil changed or whatever it is, which is very great and helpful and all the things. So it's just it can improve relationships when we not only understand ours, but also like how that because my husband doesn't. I mean, they're cute. He likes the text I send, but it's not the same for him. He could go without it. You know what I mean? So it's me learning. Oh wait, he likes it when if I cook him a dinner, or I've thought of doing the things for him. So it's you can be married to someone completely different. You just gotta learn what theirs are and how to love your person.
I get that. It's
it's hard.
Food for thought.
Yeah,
food for thought for sure.
Yeah.
I like how your love language leaks into your company though.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a village.
Yeah, it is. And I always say, I feel like who can't be told that they're doing a good job? Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of it we are. Like, we're all so hard on ourselves. Like, anyone you talk to that's busy, that's like, I'm trying to do a million things. And I'm like, have you seen all the right things that you're doing in your life? Because I do that self-talk to myself. I do it for myself because I'm always like, especially being an entrepreneur, I'm sure you understand. There's a million things. I get to the end of the day, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't do this, and this. Where did the time go? It's so easy to be hard on myself. And whereas I'm like, you know what? I did enough today. Obviously, there's days where I don't. But like on the whole, I'm learning to be, because that's also a road to burnout, I feel like.
Yeah, I would agree. That's actually a good point, is the anxiety. So I was diagnosed with anxiety too. Like I have like generalized anxiety.
Sure, same.
So I'm sure like late at night when you're like trying to sleep and it's like, bam, you have to do all these tasks.
Oh my God.
How do you prevent yourself from the burnout? Like how are you pacing yourself currently?
Yeah, I love this question because I really think about it a lot. And a lot of it's like what I said is I'm like, you know what? I'm not here to conquer the world in a day. Like Freelife, I'm not here to scale, right? Because like when you're in the entrepreneur industry, we are very, not we, but like,
bam,
yes, and focused on KPIs and income and like, I'm like, for the love of God, I hear you. Like, those matter because at the end of the day, if you're not making business or money, you're not a business. I get it. But I'm like, I'm not losing. I'm a very heart-led founder and leader, and I'm not losing that about myself, right? I'm like, look, I come from a privileged place. Like, Freelife doesn't have to be my income. I work and also have a husband. We make money. So for me, it's taking the pressure off of Freelife being my sustainable income within the
Sole
next year.
And only thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course I want to make money. Like you said that, and I will scale, but it's taking that pressure, because a lot of people ask you all the time, like, what's your 5-year plan for Freelife? I'm like, dude, I don't know. And you know what? Like, I'm also going to stand behind that that's okay. Yeah. Because also, I haven't seen it yet. I don't think I'm new in thinking this, but I'm also like, I want to build a business and organization and movement that's kind of, that's community built. So right now I'm in the information and data gathering stage where I'm talking to people in the community. And then what does it look like to build an organization that the community needs? Because I don't have all the answers. Like, I have an idea of what I think people need, but I'd rather source and understand what people need and build a community and business that way.
Do you watch TikTok?
I love TikTok.
So there is a woman named Hannah from Salary Transparent Street where she asks people what their income is.
Oh, yeah, on the street. Like, I feel like I've seen those.
Has that been a consideration for you? To where you'd ask them, like, are you sober? Or,
that's a great idea.
Well, I guess maybe you wouldn't be able to ask if they're an alcoholic since you don't use it.
Yeah.
Since you don't use the word, but I guess maybe you could even start using short form content like that, where it's like, are you trying to get sober?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, for sure. And I'm not anti the word. I don't use it personally.
Okay.
Like, so like, I should clarify. So I don't use it. I used to. Changed my mind. Also, on a side note, I know we've been everywhere, but if anyone wants to read a good book on changing your mind, read Think Again by Adam Grant. It's so good. It's really, it'll fuck you up. It's all about, like, basically changing your mind.
Right.
And the importance of intellectual curiosity and holding multiple opposing ideas in our head and all that stuff. Yeah. So anyway, that's also why I changed my mind and have reserved the right to do so. I think it's a healthy thing to do. Yeah. But so on the alcoholic term, absolutely. I have people that come all the time that use it. I just don't use it for myself. Mm-hmm. And I've chosen with the marketing, branding, and language with Freelife to not use it. But people are free to use I have two guiding principles. They're not really rules for Freelife, but it's like, don't do whatever you want as long as it's not hurting yourself or hurting others. Like, if alcoholic works for someone and they identify that way and it helps keep them sober and they find community, then do it. It becomes a problem for me when we say everyone's an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the only term to use. Like, then I'm like, we're going to put some boundaries there.
Yeah. I feel like you have, like, you're very polarizing. So, like, you could just, like, I think that you could make content like that where you, like, go out into the street and you talk about free life, or what free life could do for somebody if they are.
Yeah, for sure. I'd definitely be open to it. I think it's, again, a lot of what I try to do in my own personal life is, maybe it's a personality trait, I don't know, but, like, getting people to think critically and not just accept things the way they are because someone's told you that things have to be this way. And I know a lot of it comes from being raised very deeply religious, right? Where it was like, if you don't believe this, you're going to hell, you know, or whatever the case may be. And then, unfortunately, my recovery experience early on was very like that, right? Where it was like, you must go to a 12-step, you must call a sponsor, you must do these things because you have a disease that's doing push-ups in the parking lot, quite literally what they say. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was like, I don't think so, you know. And then so when you try to buck tradition, a lot of times you get a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
But I like to encourage people to think for themselves.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if Christianity or AA or whatever it is still resonates with you, not you, but, you know, like with the person, that's fine. But, like, you have the option to think for yourself and think outside the box.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I was thinking of like a methodology or like a system that you have for people who are, like, coming into it, like, or I'm sorry, not like I was personally thinking about it, but I was wondering if you do, like.
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I mean, to be honest, at this point, it's not documented yet, or I think a lot of people that end up, there's like two categories of people that find free life. It's people who just don't drink, right, and they want to hang out with other people who don't, and then there's other people who may have a similar story to me, who's like, I've tried traditional means of recovery,
Everything.
Yes, exactly, and I just don't fit anywhere. And so, loosely held, those are like the types, or that come. So
I'm gonna phrase it. I'm trying to phrase it to where it's not like you're like against the current systems but, like, do you feel? Opinionated question, and I'm projecting. Do you feel like our governments and our local systems for people who are trying to get into sobriety, do you think they're effective?
They can be. They can be.
I hear a but.
I know. I'm trying to process, like, you know, I want to say it correctly. I think they can work for certain people. I think they're very outdated. I don't think that they're in line with current needs, and I don't think that the addiction and sobriety recovery space has really taken a look at the landscape of people and what they need to get sober. And I say that because, like, you know, I've been introduced to writers and people who even point out that, so, like, when you go to intensive outpatient, which is group therapy, or say you get a DUI and you have to go to, you know, court or whatever, drug court, they make you go to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, AA preaches God. The first step is, like, something about, like, you're powerless, right, without a God to help you get sober. And some people say that's wrong. You shouldn't have to do that, because what if you're an atheist? What if you don't believe in God?
Right.
You know,
or you're Muslim.
100%.
Or you're Buddhist.
Yep.
Right.
And, you know, people push back and they'll say things like, well, God could be a doorknob. I'm like, oh my God, okay. I mean, okay, that's an interesting argument, or a tree or whatever it is. I'm like, but I think that pushing the main type of recovery people have access to is often religious based, and we're doing a disservice to people to not give them options
who aren't a part of the traditional Judeo-Christian building
100%.
block.
I mean, I got sober in Cleveland, Ohio, and that's so it was Alcoholics Anonymous was born in Akron, only an hour away. So it's very steeped, very deep. Like, we would say the Lord's Prayer at every meeting. And I'm like, that's a Christian prayer. Again, fine if you're a Christian, I'm not.
Right.
Like, what are we doing here? You know? And then you're just made to feel like you're broken. And that was another part of what Free Life's messaging was too. I'm not anti-AA. I'm not anti-Christian based recovery. Again, if it works for you, you know, universal you, if it works for somebody, oh my God, use it. I'm never going to tell someone to use something that works for them. But pushing it on other people, and the messaging is, and still is, you're broken. It's not the system. You're broken.
Right.
So and it's quite a lazy and easy excuse to me, because like if it's the individual's fault for their addiction and why they can't get sober within a system, well, of course, like it's an easy way out, because then it's just always the individual's fault. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do is be like, oh, let's take a step back and look a little bit bigger at the systems that are in place.
Yeah.
And maybe you're not a failure because you can't get sober within said system.
Yeah. Do you have a chip on your shoulder almost, where it's like, I need to fight the system, like I need to be better? Is there? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think maybe a year ago, to be honest, like I've done enough work. You know, I'm trying to, and maybe there are days where I get angry, you know, or frustrated. But I also know that like Alcoholics Anonymous and all these other different things have worked for a lot of people, and they continue to, right? So I'm not out here to cancel them, to do different. I want to coexist with them, right? Like I want to peacefully be able to do both. So I just want to show, I want to come alongside them and show people, like, go to AA, come to Free Life. Like, I mean, I always say when I got sober, I threw the kitchen sink at it. I did Buddhist recovery, right? I did Christianity, I did AA, I did group therapy, individual therapy. And I don't see what the problem with that is. But there unfortunately are people out there, and I do believe that is very harmful. The individuals can be, that say, like, you know, AA is the only way, or whatever their chosen path of recovery is. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing, because I think there's a saying that the walls that are built from stolen bricks collapse faster than the walls that are built with the bricks that you've cultivated of your own accord. I'm not sure which. So good. Yeah, I'm not sure where. Maybe I like misquoted it, but
yeah, I got the gist.
The concept was the same, to where it's like, oftentimes I'm sure that there are, like, if we just talk about people, like let's just say people like trying to start a business, more than likely they would flourish, maybe even giving their bricks, and the bricks would then be doubled out of goodwill, as opposed to like, you're doing this wrong, so let me take a brick here and then let me put it on mine.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the part, and that is what has been concerning though, is like, and that's what I want people to understand. Like, I haven't been able to, well, I won't. I'm afraid to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, truly. Because people are like, oh, why don't you go and just like promote Free Life? And I was like, are you kidding me? I would be eaten alive there. Maybe not all, but I'm not willing to put myself at that risk emotionally, you know, or whatever. Because there's old school ideas of what recovery should look like. Yeah. And I've done enough self-work and thought of, and I also try to perspective take a lot. I think addiction is a very complicated, complex, layered issue. And so it is scary. And a lot of the people I think that are saying, okay, this is the only way to do it, have seen people die, right? So that's very traumatizing. And I haven't experienced that. I'm very lucky. I pray I never will. But I think if you've gone through that, and then you've seen AA work for a number of people, or traditional recovery means, it's easy to be like, well, this works, I've seen it. And then I've seen people leave the rooms, is what they say, and die. So then they're coming from a place of fear. And that's another reason why Free Life exists, is like, I don't want to come from scarcity and fear.
Abundance.
Yeah, I want people to be like, sobriety is beautiful and incredible, and like, it's hard. Trust and believe. I almost burnt my life to the ground before I got sober. But like, recovery can be so much more than that, and I don't want to live in constant fear of relapse. I am aware. I get it. Like, I could go out today and drink, like, you're not. but I don't want to focus on that.
Right.
So I wanted to build an organization that showed people that you don't have to live in constant fear.
Wow. Maybe the tagline should be freedom and abundance.
Ooh, I love it. Ooh, that's good. I got like full body chills on that one. See, but this is honestly, to be honest, what I needed anyways. It was just like a brainstorming session to get the words out, to figure out. Guys, I think when you're so in your own business, it's hard to pull yourself out. You know what I mean? And see.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you're so in it. I tell the same spiel over and over, right? Because I'm founder. I run this, So sometimes I'm like, I don't know. So that's incredible. Thank you.
I think it's actually really funny because Chris Hively was talking about how, like, technically the founder's only job is to just network. Like, that's like...
Well, that's why I love the role. Didn't know that.
Yeah, like, the sole purpose of a founder, I mean, obviously, like,
sure,
if
you're...
More than
that, but
but, like, if you had, like, a full team, the CEO or the founder just networks and, like, just talks.
Wait, that's a real thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is coming from the guy who sold the company for like
thanks.
1.5 billion.
Well, it's funny you said that because I have had many different jobs, whatever, like done a million things. And I was just telling someone recently, I was like, I just feel at home in the founder role, right? And it's not even just being in charge. It's not that. Anyway, that's cool. That's very affirming because I do. I live for it. I love connections. I love coffee. I love, like meeting different people and then seeing like how do what you do, how does it fit into, Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So
maybe I'll build it out eventually so that can be my full-time job.
Yeah,
Didn't know people did that.
Yeah, like I'm sure that I think his name is Scott Janae.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think he's the CEO of Magazine Jukebox.
Yes, I was gonna say Jukebox. That's what I was thinking.
I'm sure like he does a lot of the back end stuff too, but I'm almost positive that like he's the one going up to like Riverside or like Kaiser Hospital and being like, y'all want some magazines? And so, like, I think it makes sense how, because you're the founder and, you're the face of Freelife, that this is what you believe in. Like, just champion it.
Thank you.
Just
and
keep
I'm
at it.
living it. You know what
yes,
I mean? I think,
yes.
what do they say? Like, build it and they will come. Like, I didn't see what I was looking for. So I guess the entrepreneurial mindset was like, well, okay, it's not here, so I guess I'll create it.
How are you measuring your growth now? Because I know that, like, especially in the startup space, it's like, what am I doing? Or like, am I doing the right thing?
Oh, all the time. I mean, I feel like it's that thing where you throw spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks, right? Like with a lot of it, especially with something like this. I think what Freelife definitely falls into the category of, I don't know if you've heard of a social entrepreneurship. It's almost... Educate me. Yeah, it's cool, like a B Corp. But it's like, all businesses have purpose, but like, it's a business with a purpose and that does social good. So it's kind of like a nonprofit, but it's not. It's like the easiest way I can say it. We're not just like obviously making money and like all those things, but it's really, like I've said, like it's a social movement. It's we call ourselves like a social recovery platform, like across the board. Like, so to get back to your question of how I'm measuring success, I think right now it is. I was just talking about this. I mean, there's different ways you can measure success, right? I can look at like, okay, how much income am I bringing? How many followers do I have? How many people show up at our events? So there's certainly those. Of course, I'm like trying to always increase. I think the big ones is like how many people are attending our events and how many new people, and then how many people come back. So there's that portion that we're measuring. But then, and this is why I brought up social entrepreneurship, because there's a softer, squishier side where, you can't put a quantity on someone that, and I get them not all the time, but a lot, messages that are like, you help me get sober, not me, but like your organization or your message, or you help me stay sober, you help me not drink that night. Like, how do you quantify that? Right. I don't have an answer. You can't put that in dollars and signs. Okay. So on my days where I get really frustrated because I'm like, wow, we are not raking in the bucks, or whatever, or we had 5 people at our event, whatever it is, I'm like, but I also don't know the people that I'm impacting that like haven't reached out, or they left an event and were like, I stayed sober tonight because I had something to do. Like, I've had people say that where I was like, I was going to drink tonight, but I was able to come, right? Or they meet someone, because that's the idea, right? Is you meet people at a Freelife event, hopefully, and make your own connections and then go do your own, like build your own relationships. So yeah, that's so cool where people, I see, that is one of the most rewarding parts where people are making those connections at events and then going out and still, living alcohol-free lives or sharing vulnerably about an issue. So that side of things is really hard to quantify.
Yeah.
Still figuring it out.
Yeah. When you think of success personally, and free life as a human being, as a woman, do you look at success as being, oh wow, like we've helped 100,000 people, 1,000,000 people, we've sold like 1,000,000 tickets for events. What do you see success as?
I love that question. I haven't thought that far ahead because I don't know what it can do. I think we have a lot of potential, but I actually use what I use to get sober is like, do the next right thing.
I love that.
Yeah, well, it applies to recovery, and most things actually, but would I love, of course, to be franchised in every country and like millions of people, and yeah, like who wouldn't? I think that's just like a normal, right? Like I'd love to eventually be able to do this full time and not have to, work another job and do all the things.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I haven't thought that far, and that's a way I prevent burnout as well, because even if Free Life closed tomorrow, I would be proud of the work that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? As cheesy as it, trite as it sounds, it's really true. I get really overwhelmed thinking of, because what happens if I set these high goals and then I don't meet them? You know what I mean? Where I'm like, I'm in 20 states and I'm da-da-da-da-da. Like, I think we can do that, but I'm like, okay, how do I do this event well? Then the next event well?
Mm-hmm.
Make that next, right? And so, yeah, so really I'm like in the moment, in the day, and then the next thing and the next thing. And it's been cool. I mean, it is organically growing. Our first meetups had like 2 people, and now we had a networking one of 75. And, so like it's sustainably growing. I get overwhelmed if I think too big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
100%. I mean, I think it's awesome because I feel like I'm meeting a fellow quality over quantity type of individual.
100%. Who was it? Maybe it's Seth Godin. I don't know. Who was like 1,000 true fans is better than like 1,000,000. Like there's this whole thing about like your real fans or I don't want fans of me, but you know what I mean? Like, or customers.
Champions of free life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like people who really get it. And also like I'm reading an incredible book by Priya Parker called The Art of Gathering, and it's just like how we gather, right? And how do we do it better? And I don't know, will I pack as much impact because like sure, for social media, if I have 200 people in a room, sure, I mean, maybe that's cool and hopefully I'll impact people. Or if we have a smaller gathering and one person decides to stay sober or get sober, you know what I mean? And then that changes the trajectory of their lives. It's where's the impact and how do you measure it?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Actually, I think I would disagree with you on that part.
Oh, please, yeah.
I think that, and I'm projecting.
Yeah.
But I think that the person who was impacted or who became sober or decided not to relapse that night is far, far, far more impactful than getting like 1,000, 10,000 followers overnight.
That's what I'm saying, 100%. Or 200 people that came to an event and it was like, I had a good time. Yeah, and then I left. You know what I mean? Like, and then you didn't think about Free Life for the event again, versus a smaller event of 9 to 12 people, which is supposed to be like the magic number of like where you can be vulnerable and it's not too big, all the things. And yeah, exactly. And they feel like they can share, they feel seen, and then they're sober, so then that impacts their kids' lives because their mom or dad is more present. So yeah, that's a great point.
A sticky audience.
Sticky, what does it mean? So
a sticky audience is somebody, or let's say a group of people that have preference to. Hold on, let me backtrack. So, for example, like if this podcast is super 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 niche, and we were talking about snails, and only like 1,000 people listen to the podcast about snails. Yeah. That's better than me having like 1,000,000 followers. Where like I might talk about snails on social media, but only like 1,000 people truly listen. I'd rather have the 1,000 people be that sticky audience that supports the snail podcast
No, 100%.
Yeah.
But I know exactly what you're talking about, and I didn't know the term, but that's exactly what I'm going for, right? Yeah, is people who are engaged and it fits with them, because I think if we water ourselves down too much, then you're for nobody. Like, then you're not helping anyone, right?
Then it just becomes quantity.
Yeah. And we value in culture so much. We give people credence and status for numbers and following, when we also know those things can be easily faked and bought, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that those are the people we should be following or valuing their opinion. Yeah. And I also had this like theory that I've proven anywhere, but it's like, I think we're all like looking for some kind of fame or status online if you create content online. But I'm like, okay, if we're all famous, nobody's famous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, is anybody famous anymore? I mean, we could go a whole different rabbit, but like, I really think about this a lot, because I'm like, you've got people on TikTok who have 250 million followers. Do you know who Charlie D'Amelio is?
I don't, actually.
This perfect, that went home for the point that I'm trying to make. Girlfriend has 250 million followers, and you've never heard of her, and I'm sure you could pick one of your favorite creators on TikTok who I probably don't know. And so that's my point, is like, chasing fame or chasing numbers. Sure, I get it. Like, of course we want more numbers. I always want more followers because you get your message out. I get it. It's just a fruitless and exhausting. Because then it's like you get 10K, 20K, 50K, 100 million. Where does it stop?
When does it end? When does it suffice? Yeah.
When is it fulfilling?
Yeah.
Because it's not. And you're just really just chasing things that aren't going to ever really bring you
true joy. Yeah. Or purpose.
I mean, and I'm not saying that people are it, man, but I don't know. I'm just the right people, the right conversations. I don't know. They're just fulfilling. I mean, it's just how we're hardwired.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'd agree with you in the fact that like I'm obviously a content creator, but I would never want to get famous for something that I didn't like truly care about. Like, let's say like I wrote like a one-hit wonder song, I'd be like, well, nice, but like I wasn't really working towards it.
Sure.
It would mean more if like I had like an audience of like 10K, and they're like, oh, he's the podcasting guy, and it's like, yes, fulfilled, like mission accomplished. They
know you, and your content is improving their lives, or whatever your goal is, or inspiring them in an authentic way that resonates with them, that helps them want to go make change in their world or their own lives, right? I mean,
yeah, that's
I would rather have a 10K audience of that versus a million people who put a like, and then it's like, didn't watch the reel, didn't read the caption.
It's superficial.
Yeah, like it didn't resonate, so yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, unfortunately, we are hitting closing time.
Oh, wow, that went fast.
Very quick. But do you have any closing comments or any closing questions for me?
I think this was incredible. I am so grateful for what you're doing, because I think long-form content like this is great. There's an audience for it, so thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for the affirmation.
And I think it's important to have these conversations and to connect with people. So hopefully they'll watch and feel a little bit seen and heard. Or like I always say, like if someone's shouting, like I love listening to podcasts and I'm like shouting out at them. No, I don't agree. Like if we can make people in their car or whatever they're doing, like respond in a way that makes them think, change their mind, critically think, then I don't know. I feel like our work is done.
Yeah, honestly. And ditto even on the point to where, yes, like this is like my full-time gig, because I'm also in real estate, etc.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's like no pressure to like sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can kind of create the content like I'm doing.
Yep.
And if one goes viral, dope.
Right, that's what we're going for. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with saying that.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want their TikTok or you put the work in. Of course at the end of the day, you just want people to see it. Of course, duh. There's nothing wrong with saying it. I just think it can be dangerous when, not me and you, but like other people are seeking
consistent, constant.
Yes. And
rapidus.
Yeah, and the fame aspect and
the clout chasing.
That's the word. And
chasing.
again, I love pop culture. I do, and I'm fascinated by fame and all the things. I just don't. I think it's not a sustainable way to live, right? And not fulfilling long term.
Yeah, I always say like, the I don't know like what the psychological term is, but we see it a lot in like Elvis. You know, like extremely talented, and I don't know what happened to him. I think he just started getting, maybe the fame got too much. Amy Winehouse is another good example where like the fame becomes too much when you lose a foundation of your life.
Yeah.
So.
And you know, it's so interesting. Allison Stoner, I think, do you know who? Have you heard?
Wow, yeah, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Well, she's got a new podcast out, and I'm so excited to listen to it.
All right.
It's about, you actually might like it. It's all about this.
Okay.
It's about the background of like child stars, but it goes way deeper into like what is fame. She's gonna do a whole episode on like, and this is why I sound a little smarter because I listened to her. Cheated, but like she is going into like what your brain does underneath fame and like the why we shouldn't be chasing it and what is it doing, and then she's going even deeper into like influencer culture with children, right? And like because she was a child star and then how that impacted her, and then the impact now with, you know, children. Anyway, and the reason I was interested, it all ties back, is she said because fame becomes addictive. She said she heard like, you know, I think it was like Justin Bieber was saying there's no better high than 20,000 people screaming your name on a stage. You get down, and then like every other experience after that is like flat because you've experienced the best. Like, and so and it's just incredible. It's just talking about like, no, the old, like the stuff of connecting with people, relationships, family, like stripping it back to the roots is kind of where we might need to go, you know?
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is that's kind of the direction that we're heading into. More and more people are, I mean, it's not like in droves and waves, but I'm starting to hear it more, like amongst friends, amongst the younger generation below myself, because I'm like at the tail end of the millennials. I'm like at the start of like Gen Z. So
you're like a zillennial?
Is that what we're calling it?
I don't know. What year were you born?
97.
Yeah,
97.
I think so. I think that's a zillennial, because it's like, I've seen that on TikTok where you might resonate with Gen Z and millennials, and so you're like, who? That's a you're a
okay. I'm a zillennial. All right, yeah.
I mean,
I still listen to like a bunch of 90s music.
100%. Yeah, so. Then look up zillennial on TikTok. You'll never get off of it.
Okay.
It's great. It's very niche, but yeah.
Hey, maybe that's the niche audience I can appeal to.
Yeah, because they're like, you know, like they're not completely millennial, but they're like, I'm not completely Gen Z either. You know, like we're in this like weird in between spot.
So it's always weird being on like that middle ground.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm a middle child too.
Oh my gosh. There you go. Now you know what you're gonna do for the next few hours. Just go on TikTok.
yeah, I definitely will. But any other closing comments or questions?
I think this is great. I guess maybe think outside the box and challenge the status quo.
All right. Well, guys, this is Christina Kimbrough of Freelife. She has been awesome. To the audience, guys, the grass is not greener on the other side. It's greener where you water. Be well and walk tall. Thank you guys so much again.
Awesome. That was incredible. Thank you.
I appreciate you being a guest, Christina.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I love this. Was that really 2 hours?
I think it was an hour and 27 minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. So how does it work? You could probably just go through edit,